one thing I wanted to speak about was institutions. Now, institutions for a very long time have worked towards the benefits of society. You know, you have medical institutions, you have collegiate institutions, you have research institutions, and so forth. This does not mean that these institutions, since their foundings up until now, have helped us in every single way possible. And the reason why I say this is because institutions have a guideline to follow. Whenever, an institution decides to designate itself as an institution, they have certain principles that they have to follow. They have certain guidelines that they have to abide by in order to provide the service that they're providing or do the research that they're providing in order for the service to be implemented later. But it's very unique that knowledge is limited within these institutions. They may have their own guidelines, their own laws, they even have their own jurisdiction at points. Because at one point, the Supreme Court decided that corporations have as much rights as people. So, if corporations can have as much rights as people, why can't institutions? And institutions technically do, because they're entities in their own right. They exist and they provide a service and employment for people in order for that service and knowledge to recirculate back into society, such as a university, such as a medical institution, such as a hospital, or pharmaceutical institutions. It's very ironic. It's very ironic that we value institutions and the amount of work that they do behind their work and their research because we credit them as a valid source. But it's ironic that we give them all this praise, and yet some of these institutions don't praise us back. Because think about it, without the people for the institution to either treat or research, who would they research? No one. So it's very ironic that they don't give us the same praise. And the reason why I mean praise is because we are never told the full truth about the things that are going on within our many institutions. Now, let's take this into consideration. If institutions were really as good as they claim to be, why is it that pharmaceutical companies develop different drugs to treat different parts of the same symptom, but then come up with other drugs to treat the side effects of the drugs you've just taken? Why come up with new experimental medicine and put it out in the market up until the point where the pharmaceutical companies have to create a recall and then lawsuits have to take place? You could attribute that to people make mistakes all the time, or that's how the system works. You shouldn't necessarily blame pharmaceutical institutions or people because everybody's different and everybody is meant to react different to all these types of medications. But that's my point. Why is it that we're being subjected to thinking that we need these pharmaceutical medicines? Just recently, I just got into herbal healing and organic healing, and it's very wonderful to find out what cinnamon alone can do, what ginger alone can do. But when we're made to think that these medicines made in this chemically induced laboratory are going to help us, well, how can it? Did they take my DNA and say, you know what, this particular medicine would be perfect for this particular person? No, they make one general medicine for thousands among thousands of people that have different DNA structure, that have different genetic compositions, that have different pasts and different lifestyle behaviors. And that's the thing that a lot of pharmaceutical companies don't take into account. Why? Because that's not what you think about when you're in the business of making money. You don't think about the people. You only think about the next pill, the next injection, or the next type of enema that can help somebody temporarily. And then on the long term, if there's a chemical in that medicine that doesn't go with their body well, in the long term, it might just harm them. I've heard of various amounts of stories of people getting cancer or tumors or different types of illnesses and diseases from medicines that they thought was curing them for a different disease or for a different illness. And that's very sad in our state of having a society. Because why should we subject individuals to needing medicines that they technically don't need? Same thing goes for the educational institution. Now, I'll bring up the indigo children, and I'll bring up crystal children, which I'll speak about more a little bit later on. But indigo children and crystal children are subjected to learn the same material that our grandparents learned. Or even further back, what our great-grandparents learned. Our planetary changes don't only come at an energetically vibrational level. They don't only come in that way. As I've stated before, our children are changing because of this new type of energy that is in our planet. That's allowing us to become fuller human beings, rather than the zombie ones that you see walking around like, oh, I need a job. Oh, I can't believe I haven't found something for myself. Oh, I'm putting everything on my own shoulders because no one else will support me. You know? It's more than just that anymore. But it's about what is it that you're willing to do to change things for the better. Because to be honest, if they don't get better, you don't want them to get worse. Because the only thing that we can do is build a better future for our children. Because that's the only thing that is the only thing that seems reasonable at this point. It isn't trying to get the big house. It isn't trying to get the Mercedes. If you're still stuck in that state of mind, trust me, it's going to backfire on you when these banks go down. It's going to backfire on you when you think that your mortgage isn't going to skyrocket because of interest rates, and then it does. You know? It's about what's important. It's not about what seems important at the moment. It's about what is important. Now, I wanted to bring up indigo children in reference to the educational institution because our children are being born different. Our children are different in nature at this point. I'm an indigo child. If you couldn't tell, well, now you know. But our traditional American institutions of education don't abide by the actual standards that I feel it takes to be able to learn sufficiently anymore. Our planetary changes is coming with vibrational changes, biological changes for our children, and also technology based. We are learning new ways on how to do everything. Everything isn't just a square anymore in a box, such as old TVs. Things are touchscreen now. Things have different interfaces. Technology has evolved to new levels of being able to interact with us and us being able to interact with technology. So of course, with this type of growth in our technology, I think we would learn that we would need to improve our educational system. Because why are we still teaching children with the same textbooks that existed 20 years ago? Why are we still using the same types of old traditional methods of teaching when it can be very affordable to install a projector in every classroom? Now you may think to yourself, why would you need projectors in classrooms? Because we as people deny the fact that our children watch TV, go onto the internet. So just imagine how much more interactive learning would be if the school provided a system which coincides with what they do at home. If you know that your child is going to spend 8 hours in school bugging out, and they're going to go home and they're going to watch some stuff online in a calm, collected manner because they are watching something that actually intrigues them, then that's very significant in how we can teach our children to be more calm and to be able to intake more in a school environment, which is the place where they're supposed to learn, rather than having them do their own things at home. You know, there's a lot of things that are changing that our educational system needs to jump on the back of. Because if we don't, what does that say about our commitment to our children? Now, you talk about funding being an issue. You know, you talk about, let's say, the teachers themselves, they're not motivated enough, or they're not provided with the proper tools, right? Why have there been so many strikes lately? Because people feel that they're not being properly compensated for what it is they're doing. Or even better, people feel they're not being respected in the way that they should be. And that's another issue all on its own. But what we need to start talking about is how are we going to make learning and education more fluid and more intriguing for our kids. Because they are the people that are going to inherit this planet after we are all gone. And if we don't do a good job of maintaining a consistent relationship with our children, with technology, and with the energies that are going on, where you need to become more self-aware, then we aren't going anywhere. We're going to remain in the same state where we believe Bush-like ideals and Obama-like lies. The other institution I want to bring up was the medical institution. And now when we think of hospitals, we think of them as the go-to institution for our body, for biology. If anything is wrong with us, hospital time. And it is also a very invaluable resource, because the medical institution has done a lot of research and has done a vast amounts of things to help people in the long run. But even the medical institutions themselves have little biases that a lot of people don't necessarily think about. But they're all associated with who? Insurance. Because insurance is a formality that's used for people to be able to pay for their medical practice, or for people to be able to get medical attention. Or, in other words, it's a way to be able to have validity, that you have money to pay for this. Now, if we think about this, a medical institution is not supposed to refuse anyone any service at any time. Now, others may limit that to the emergency room. But I feel that as a medical institution, you have committed yourself to treating and helping the public in whatever biological problem may arrive within those people or that person. Now, if we get to our modern society and we think about the wages doctors get and how much money is spent on a catheter tube, we start giving it a monetary value. Because let's face it, it costs millions among millions of dollars to build a hospital. And of course, it takes millions of dollars to keep running it, to upkeep it. But as a medical institution, I'm under the impression that you already have all the sponsors that you need in order to provide a service to the public. But you're not going to do this for free. You got to make sure that people have their insurance, right? In order for you to treat them in the proper way. Or else you're going to treat them in a mediocre way and then send them home. But what I'm trying to get to is, why do we need to put a price on a person's health? That's very significant in our day, in our era. Because a lot of people put a price tag on other people's health. It doesn't make much sense to me. Sometimes I think about pharmaceutical companies, the medical institution, and insurance corporations. And they themselves are choosing what is best health-wise for Americans. Now, as experts in their field, I can understand them knowing what would be best. But how dare they subject us to having to take pills in order to treat a condition that might, at the end of the day, not treat the condition, but it might make it worse, or it may give me something additional. Why am I subjected to having to make sure I either have insurance or have enough money before going to the hospital? Because I know that if I go to the hospital and I am feeling sick, they will not treat me. Now, let's give it this circumstantial. Let's say I'm in my home. I end up cutting off 2 of my fingers because I'm working on a construction project. I rush to the hospital and the emergency room takes me right in. Now they're helping me sew up my fingers and the doctor sews up one. Perfect. And then what he tells me, he says, all right, good, we were able to get one on. But I'll have to tell you the truth. This finger, my service for attaching this finger and the tools used to be able to perform this surgery cost about $3,000. Would you like me to reattach the other one? Do you have medical insurance? Do you have a form of paying for your other finger? Why should I have to choose between a monetary exchange, a monetized form of currency, over my finger? You might think about it, wow, that's very important to think about, and it is. Because it happens all the time, and not just with fingers, but with full operations, with transplants, with people who work their entire lives. And when they need help for something, there is no help to be offered because they don't have the proper money to be able to afford the help. Makes no sense. But these institutions work together because they are in the business of making money. They are not in the business of helping people. Now, I've met doctors, I've met pharmaceutical technicians, and I've also met insurance specialists. And every single one of them is not a bad person. They have good intentions, they have good hearts. But 2 things normally happen. One, they go in there with a good heart and good intentions, and the institution just shows them what it is that exists. It shows them what business it is they got into. And if they want to do well in the business, if they want to make money in the business, then they're going to have to abide by the guidelines that that institution is instilling. And they just deal with it. Or they go in there into, let's say, the medical institution, pharmaceutical institution, or the insurance corporations, and they just put up with it for as long as they can and then find an alternative. Because if you as an individual are in the business of helping people, these institutions are not in your better interest. It's very funny that, we're talking about things that have meaning and don't have meaning, because I find it very daunting when people become nurses or people become doctors or people become these high-level, they get these high-level positions and jobs. And when you ask them, like, hey, what made you decide to do this? What made you decide to do that? about 30 to 40% of the people will say, I don't know. This is something that I just chose. Or, I don't know. This is what my parents wanted me to do when I went to college. And it's very significant to note that if some of these people are saying, I don't know, then they are really walking through life aimlessly, like that fish in the bubble, not realizing what is actually occurring. But they are only interested in making their life, and making their own money, buying their own home, building their own family, whatever it may be. But it's significant to think about why you do what you do. Lil Wayne said that in a video he posted recently. Make sure you know why you do what you do. Because if you don't, why are you doing it? Now again, you may have reasons, you need money, this and the third. But think about it. If you are a type of person that is significant in their own right, why do you feel you need to take advantage of others?